Howdy. In today's video, we're going to be looking at Chroma. Super delicious Chroma build. I have to give credits to the almighty Igreshi from the Discord server because I did not think of this on my own. And I'm kind of sad that I didn't. It's pretty intense, and it's not something that could have been viable before the Nova changes because of something that happened to her helmet ability. Now let's go right into the dirty details. This is a helmet ability set up for Chroma using the helmet ability from Nova, Null Star. And the main thing that matters here is going to be that Null Star counts as weapon damage. Before the Nova changes, her light rework, her antimatter orb counted as weapon damage and her Null Star did not. After the changes, her antimatter does not and her Null Star does. I don't understand why they did that, and they didn't give those details in the patch notes or whatever. Very wonky, but it's a thing. And they also buffed Null Star in other ways. They doubled the particles, they gave it better duration, it scales better with stuff, higher damage and stuff on the augment for it, and a bunch of other stuff. I'm not going to go over literally all the changes. What matters is it's pretty good now, especially for killing stuff. And there have been a few builds I've seen other people do on Nova, but I couldn't find any videos. I'm sure there's some out there, but I couldn't find any videos of Null Star on Chroma. And the main reason this works is because it counts as a weapon now, and Vex Armor buffs weapon damage by a ludicrous amount. And normally people don't care for this because it's additive, but that doesn't matter here because you can't put mods on Null Star that give like damage bonus because strength works differently than that. And it results in some pretty wacky damage. The setup we have going on is still not final. I would not say this is the best setup at all. I'm still like testing stuff here and there, but I do like being able to get opinions from other people. So we have corrosive projection for armor strip because we have no other source of armor strip in the build outside of heat ticks giving armor strip inherently. I do find it a little bit annoying to having to wait for the heat DOT to tick to get the extra armor strip. So having corrosive projection to outright have almost double the damage if I have no other armor strip sources against enemies with max armor is pretty nice. Prime sure-footed so we don't get knocked over. Equilibrium, very important. We will run out of energy if we don't have this. We need equilibrium here. Adaptation, because we want to be tankier. This setup, the one I'm going to be showing you, isn't made for level cap, though I will show a variance of it that can sort of work at level cap. Umbral Intensify for strength, Stretch for more range, Blind Rage for strength and it nukes our efficiency, Neutron Star because this makes it so that it does big PP damage explosions when we have our Null Star things go out and hit enemies. And recasting it will resummon all the Null Stars and send all the remaining ones out to nuke the map. It also gives it guaranteed heat procs. Archon Vitality so that we double our heat procs, and it also gives us higher HP, which is nice, and primed continuity for more ability duration. Archon Battery is here so we don't have to run primed flow, and this combined with the huge armor bonus we can get from Vex Armor is going to make it so we have a lot of energy cap. Molt's Augmented for extra strength. Something you need to remember though is that Vex Armor snapshots, so once you build up your Molt Augmented, you're going to need to let this run out and then recast it and rebuild it back up to take full advantage of the bonus strength. This isn't that big of a deal because Null Star counts as weapon damage and weapon kills can build up Vex Armor, so just killing stuff with Null Star will build up the Vex Armor for you. Then for our focus school we have Mad Eye because we want casting speed, because we do not have casting speed shards on, and we get Slink Strength for extra ability strength, very nice. For the Archon shards, we have 5 Tau Forged Reds, so we can get a total of 75% ability strength, because it is going to be double dipping by increasing the damage on Null Star and increasing the damage bonus we get with Vex Armor. Very nice. For Companion, there is a few different options. You can run something like Panzer. You can run a Doggo with the Mecha set so that you can spread more hits everywhere. I find that we do need some sort of viral application, so I want to have that, of course. Hellstrom is what we're running on Nautilus, a typical viral radiation primer setup. and Nautilus with all of these very basic mods. Synth Deconstruct is very, very important here to help us get health orbs, to help us get energy, because this, if you're not careful, you can run out of energy pretty easily in this setup, so you got to make sure you have some energy sustain. Then our primary weapon is completely up to choice. It doesn't really matter. I have Dara Vandal on because I like it. This is almost entirely irrelevant, though it is nice to have a weapon capable of killing acolytes. Epitaph Prime here because it lets us go for secondary fortifier, so we get better survivability with overguard gating and overguard in general. It works for heat inherits and melts overguarded enemies, and we can run heat inherits on it in general for big PP damage because we're doing heat damage with the Null Star augment, so a heat inherit will work with it. And then viral as well on it because viral is more damage, and if we can't get enough consistent procs from our Nautilus, being able to forcefully apply it with Epitaph is nice. And Epitaph's force cold procs are of course also very nice. The melee is also mostly up to choice in the case of if you don't have enough damage. If you don't have enough damage, you can go more armor strip unless your teammates have armor strip. I personally would like to run this with my friends or teammates or whatever who have armor strip, in which case it's not a problem. But if you aren't doing that, then Zorus is a good option for armor strip because you can go melee influence. It has forced electric procs on the heavy attack, so you can then run corrosive on the weapon and just spread corrosive all over the place. One heavy attack in a group of enemies with melee influence active already will apply max corrosive procs on an entire group of enemies. Very, very consistent. The mods here are just kind of random stuff. We have Amalgam Organ Shatter, Melee Elementalist, and Killing Blow just for the wind-up speed, so it feels faster. Lasting Stings so that the corrosive procs last longer. Voltaic Strike, Virulent Scourge so that we get corrosive and so that we get status chance. I have both of them because I want to make sure I don't get screwed over if another element is given to me by a teammate from some sort of buff. Because you could run just Virulent Scourge and will mix with the electric at base to make corrosive, but I don't want to risk a teammate screwing me over. Melee Prowess for more status chance because why not? Volatile Quick Return for a bigger explosion because that's very nice. And then Dispatch Overdrive so that we get movement speed to make us very, very fast. Very, very nice to have. I say very too often. And that is the general setup. I will show it in the simulacrum, and in mission. But before I get to that, if you want to run this in a not level cap setup, in a level cap setup, since, you know, adaptation and going for max health and tanking like that doesn't work at level cap, I would run some level of invis. As long as you just spam your abilities, you can use shade and be perma invisible 100% of the time. It does have worse viral application, and it means you cannot use your weapons, though in a team setup it's not that big of a deal. The better option than shade though would be the Harass Kubro, because it also can make you invis with the precept in the same way that the shade does, while also allowing you to run the mecha set to spread stuff all over the place for big damage. I unfortunately do not have the Harass Kubro, so I can't show it, but that is an option. And that's it for the build, so I'm going to real quick show in the simulacrum how it works because it's important to show it there, and then show how it works in mission because there is discrepancies in how enemies are grouped up and how it will work. So it's very important that you can see exactly what's happening. So let's go to the simulacrum. Here we are in the simulacrum. I have taken off Nautilus to make things more consistent with how this works. We are going to have to build up our Vex Armor before we can get all of the damage going from Null Start. And that's obviously important because otherwise our damage is going to be nowhere near as high, and we like having big damage here. And something that I'm sure some people have noticed is that I'm not running a maximum range setup. I don't have overextended on, and there's a very good reason for that, which you will be able to see. How Null Star works is it will send out all of the little things, or one at a time, of the Null Stars when there are enemies within the radius. So if I get near these enemies, it starts sending them out. The augment causes an explosion that has an AoE and forced heat procs, but it can apply when they get sent out. It also applies if they're forcefully sent out, because you can recast Null Star and it will refresh all your null star charges and send out forcefully all of the remaining ones. But that means if you wait to cast it until it only has like one null star left, then when you recast, you're only going to nuke immediately with one null star, so it's not going to properly nuke the room. On top of that, the enemies it will target is fairly random when they're within the radius, and if it targets an enemy that's not in the best spot and it doesn't like hit all of them, then it's not really going to do a lot. And the problem with running high range is exactly that. If you have too big of a radius, it's going to spread out all over the place and hit enemies you're not trying to hit. And then in the immediate radius you're trying to kill stuff, it's not going to do anywhere close to as much damage as you want it to. Which is why I found that running lower range, not base range, right? We still stretch on, but lower range is much, much more consistent. But look, if I nuke now, it was only with 2, but now if I nuke, much more effective. It will not always be this amount of damage because the enemies are grouped up, so when enemies are grouped up, all the explosions can hit all of them at once, and if there's a smaller group of enemies in your immediate radius, it will all target the same ones so that they all take the full damage from every single explosion. That will not always be the case. You can, of course, use the power of heat inherits to make them take even more damage, plus, you know, viral, they're going to take more damage that way, and then you can do some pretty wacky amounts of damage. And it also is a lot easier to make use of heat inherits if you have lower range, because you don't screw it up by applying heat procs with your ability when you're not trying to on enemies that are far away, and then you screw up how you would want to make use of heat inherit. That's it for explaining that. Now we can go into the mission, now that you should sufficiently understand how things work and what's going on. So let's go into the mission. Here we are in the mission, and I don't know, I mean, you can't tell now because I've already built it up, but it would not build up my fury with the kills from the null star. I don't know why. I literally just an hour before recording this was testing it, and it would build up the fury kills with or the fury bonus with null star kills, and now it doesn't build up the fury bonus with null star kills. So I'm not exactly sure what's up with that, the inconsistency there. So if you know why that is, that would be awesome to let me know. El Poppy, Riz Lord out there, whoever may know, but I personally do not know why. That aside, it is still a pretty easy and comfortable setup to do. It's not exactly hard to get kills with a ranged weapon to build up your fury. And I mean, we have something like Dar on, so that makes life very easy. We don't even need the Zorus here because our damage is so high. I didn't even remember to use my Matarai, my focus school, for the extra 40%. And we do not have our bonus damage yet from Molt Augmented because I cast it. So we can actually let our Vex armor run out and then recast it to be able to get the full damage bonus, just so that you can, you know, fully appreciate the immense amount of damage that we're able to do. Now that that's run out, we make sure we get our sling strength, and then we cast our Vex armor, and then we build up said Vex armor. There we go. We're at 770. We're close to maxing out. I believe it should be, yes, 1150. I think that sounds about right. Yep, maxed out. Beautiful. And you don't even have to forcefully send out the null stars a lot of the time. Just existing near enemies will tend to murder them, which is pretty funny. It's a little bit similar to the Gara setup where you run around just having the glass stuff killing people. Well, that's unfortunate. We got violence, and violence gets rid of our abilities and screws us over. Highly unfortunate. I wanted to show you that it is capable of killing acolytes because it does fairly decent damage on them. So that's unfortunate, but it's fine. We'll just wait and go to the next acolyte so that you can see against them. Isn't that crazy? All right, we actually made it to the next acolyte. Dang, I damn near ran out of my thing right there. Come here, boy. Come here, boy. Come on. There we go. Look at that. He's getting eviscerated. Beautiful. He's dead. Isn't that amazing? Some things you should probably note are there is a 3-second delay, 2.5, 3-second delay before you are allowed to recast Nullstar again after casting it. So you can't just spam the ever-living crap out of the ability. So if you're like trying to press it and it won't cast again because you just cast it and you're getting annoyed why it won't work, that's why it won't work. So yeah, that's a thing. I would say this is probably the most effective way of playing Chroma, other than of course just spamming an absurd weapon that scales well with his Vex armor. Like build wise for Chroma himself, this is extremely effective. Very, very good, and I'm more than confident that it will be able to go all the way to level cap if built right. Maybe not this exact build because this is built for like a level 1000 or lower, but it should be able to do it this, or just a general sort of build idea. Another thing that I want to point out is that I have seen other people that have done builds, like I think a guy named, I think it was Kiai, I could be wrong, that did a Nova build around Nullstar, and he only recommended building for the upfront damage, the explosions of the Nullstar, and he did not go with heat in, or not heat inherent, but well, that, not that either, but Archon Vitality, because he didn't care for the double heat procs. And you can do that, but I think it's better to build for the heat, because if the enemy doesn't outright die, then you're kind of screwed because you can't exactly spam, but the heat procs can do huge damage even without making use of heat inherit, and if you make use of heat inherits, they're going to do an ungodly amount of damage. So by building for heats and using like Archon Vitality, it's going to scale into the higher levels much better than it will if you just build for the upfront damage, which is why I've gone for the heat procs. I think you've gotten a good general idea of how this performs in mission. I don't think we need to show any more gameplay, so let's go back to the Orbiter. Here we are back in the Orbiter. Overall, really good build. I definitely recommend it. It's both a meme build and not a meme build. Meme build in the way that it's not what you would traditionally think of doing with a Chroma setup, but not a meme build because it legitimately works and is very effective. It doesn't take much effort to do. It's not like super intensive in the case of resources, because while I do have a lot of stuff here, like Archon shards and stuff, you can make this work without putting in that much effort. It will still do like big damage. Regardless of that, it's pretty lenient in what you can run in the setup. Like, you don't have to have Nautilus, you don't have to have any specific weapons either. You can really run whatever weapons you want. Some other weapons other than Zorus, if you don't want Zorus for A, big damage because how it works with Vex armor, or B, for armor strip because your teammates might have it or you just don't need the extra damage. Other options would be Telos Boltus for parkour velocity and more grouping, because that's fairly nice. Or the Hates can also work because it can use the augments that makes enemies take more status damage. This will help both you and your teammates, since it's a debuff on the enemy and not a buff to yourself. This is a pretty decent general build, I'd say, because of how gas works with the Burning Hate augments. You can also go with Harmony to detonate the heat procs, so that you can get a big chunk of damage if all of the things hit an enemy, but you need to have all of the damage from the DOT come out immediately. Harmony works well with that because of the unique trait. Many options to go with on this build. Don't expect this to be the final version. I am still going to test stuff and try to get an idea of what I find to be the best, not necessarily the highest damage, but the most comfortable and most entertaining way of running the setup. So I probably will do an updated version of this sometime down the line when I find something I like better to go with in the whole loadout, right, as a whole. And I do still need the Hurras Kubro, so once I get that, that will be nice to try out for this as well as many other setups. Like, I still have a Gar max investment I've been having on the back burner for like 4 months now that I need to get to. I just don't have the Hurras Kubro, and I need it for that. And that's all the other stuff, little bits of information, I guess. I really recommend doing this setup, trying it at least, because it's really fun and it makes the Dragon Boy quite strong. If you have any ideas of something you want me to try or test, then leave it in the comments. I will get to it as soon as I can. that's gonna do it for the video. Leave a like and subscribe if you enjoyed it, and if you didn't, then don't do that stuff. Adios.